Let's start with the last and major objective, that is looking at the pedagogical practices. So here I am going to share my screen multiple times. First is I'm going to show you various innovative practices that are available, and then for each of those I would be sharing my own experiences of the subjects. I won't be going into depth of those subjects, considering that we all may not be having the similar background, but I'll be showing you that how I have been implementing these practices in the subjects that I have been teaching. So these are the two aspects. Please note that the examples that I'm sharing may not be best of them, or they are not the expert opinion, but they are just the experiences that I'm sharing with you, thinking that it can lead us to a correct direction or maybe certain good direction. So that's an objective of sharing my own experiences of the subjects that I've been dealing in the past few years. So let us start with this. So when it comes to teaching method, as per the Stanford Global, there are three common methods that we are all aware of. It can be teacher-centered instruction. That is, the teacher is the authority person. He speaks. Students may be in just the reception mode. That is, they are receiving the knowledge, and that's how it goes on. So that's the teacher-centered instructions that we have. The common pedagogy that has been adopted at this stage happens to be the lecture method. The second pedagogy can be a student-centered instruction. Now, student-centered instruction is where the student has the capacity, or I would say, the student is the authoritative person, and he or she, along with a group of people, are going to take up the role of understanding the concepts and then articulating it to the other people. So it's the student-centered instruction. They are going to work on the fundamentals. They are going to align the concepts, and then they are going to discuss among themselves. So that can be one more genre of teaching. And the last can be the content centered instruction. Now, content centered instruction is mostly prominent in those subjects wherein the content plays a crucial role. Some subjects which are very technical in nature, or maybe in case of some languages or grammar wherein hardcore things are to be taught to the student. So in that case, it's a content centered instruction. But whatever we adopt, there can be a different pedagogy that can be adopted. So on the basis of the source again that's available on the secondary domain for the public to take up, I have identified few of the methodologies, and few of them I myself have been practicing, as I told earlier. So that's what I'll be sharing with you. So let's begin with the first thing. So every slide that I'm going to take up now is going to talk about four different methods, and then I'll be sharing my own opinion on each of them. So when it comes to pedagogy, there can be something called project based teaching, and I'm very sure that many of us would be adopting this mode of teaching learning, wherein some real life examples or maybe real life situations are being given to the students based on the subjects that we teach them, and then they are asked to undergo or maybe take up a project in order to bring solution to it, or maybe to come up with something new, or maybe to challenge whatever is existing. So then that is known as a project based teaching. The second type of teaching can be cooperative learning. Now, in cooperative learning, because the word is cooperation, what a faculty can do is groups can be formulated, maybe 3 to 6 students in one group. These students should be given certain responsibilities which are individualistic in nature, and there are to be some responsibilities which are to be achieved in group. Because see, what happens is when we are assigning them some roles and responsibility, there are always chances of social loafing. That is, if there are three people, there is only one member who is highly active, and other two are not doing anything, and ultimately each of them score equal marks. So that should not be the case. So in cooperative learning, a strategy that can be adopted differently is like we design the things in such a way wherein every individual will be required to work, and they should be even required to work as a group in order to achieve the targets that have been set for them. So that is what is known as cooperative learning. So that's every individual would be putting in efforts and they would be helping each other in order to achieve the desired goals. So that's project based teaching and cooperative learning. So I'll be sharing my own example how I have been implementing these two in my subjects. The next happens to be experiential learning and theater based learning. So as the word suggests, experience based learning, so learning from the experiences. So in this type of methodology, what can be done is once the concepts have been taught to the students, they can be asked or maybe they can be requested to go and look into the industry or maybe look into the actual field or maybe go to that particular place, may not be taking permission but from them, but maybe going there and looking at how things are being undertaken at that place. Maybe they can just go and observe the things. It's not like the field projects, just going and observing and learning from observation. So then that is known as experiential learning. So we are sending students to a particular setup and asking them to observe the things and then come up with their own learning. So that is again one of the methods that can be adopted. The last one in this slide is titled as theater based learning. Now it like theater word is obviously related to acting and drama, right? And when we say theater based learning, it incorporates methods like role play, drama, and maybe some designing of some scripts, something like that. So once a subject has been taught to them or maybe even before teaching a particular topic, people can be assigned with a role and responsibility of designing their own script and coming up with a role play in the classroom. So that becomes very interactive because everything is student led and it's going to the student. So it becomes very easy for them to imbibe the concept and the practical aspect that we are wanting them to understand in a particular subject. So that's one more way. So now let us look at how I have been using these methodologies. So first I'll start with project based learning and cooperative learning, the example of my own subject, and theater based learning is what I'm sharing right now. So I'll just share my screen. So I assume that this Word document is visible. So this is an example of project-based teaching and cooperative learning. Now, whenever we are teaching, we have to make sure that ideally the content what we are going to deliver, we as a faculty should be understanding that what are the learning objectives associated with the content or maybe the activity that we are sharing with them. And the second is we should be even aware about at the end of the day what are my students going to learn due to this activity or maybe with the concepts that I'm teaching them. So there has to be great clarity whenever we are preparing any pedagogy or maybe we are adopting any of the method. There has to be a clarity of the objectives, learning objectives, and the learning outcomes. This is from the faculty perspective. So this is an assignment that I had designed for my own subject, which is titled as marketing management for MBA students. So now if you look into the instructions, I'm not going to read everything. I'm just highlighting how it is an example of cooperative learning and project. So this was actually a project that was been designed for the subject. Wherein if you look into this highlighted word, I have mentioned key in the group individually they have to work on certain topic. And if you look into the second highlighted sentence, I've written few topics students are supposed to work collectively. So see, this is an example of cooperative learning because if this group was having seven people, I assume. So these seven people who were in this group, every six person who is there in the group had to work something individually, and then all these six people had to come together in order to do some work. So then that's why, though it's a project based learning, I have even incorporated an element of cooperating learning into it. So I'll just share how I have done this. So this is the project assignment that was designed well before and planned well before the commencement of the academic session for them. And day one, they were given with this particular task so that there was a clarity among students as to what I am expecting from them when it comes to the subject. So see, if you see, I have practical learning aspects, then I have shared the contents, what I expect from them, what type of data is required, what kind of data I want, and how many pages I want. So I had given this information well in advance. So if you look into this, these contents that are not highlighted, they were the activities that these students had to do individually. So because it was individual, I made sure that it was coming to me in form of a handwritten assignment, so that there is no copy paste or maybe plagiarism can be avoided. So then once these people had done all this activity, then I had asked them to create a summary of what they had done. Now if they have to summarize, so obviously these 6 or 7 people, they have to come together and they have to discuss, because summary had to be in 1 or 3 page only. So compiling the entire work and bringing just 1 to 3 page requires a lot of efforts, right? So then that is how this project based learning I had converted into a cooperative learning approach also. So this is how I had like created the entire project. So whatever I have highlighted is the work wherein they had to do it in group. So this is how I had done, and then I had even given them the submission dates. So the benefit of this is like entire course I had covered in this particular project by planning it well in advance. And as soon as I used to complete the chapters, I used to divert my students towards this index and tell them, "Ki, see, this is what we have studied. Now please start go and work on these projects." So that is how I used to do it. And then at the end of the day, they had to submit the project, and I had even given them some formats which they had to in which they had to work. So by doing this, there was a lot of clarity among the student as to what is to be done. So this is the example of project that I had given when cooperative learning element was included by me. So I'll stop sharing this. Yeah. Now, if you recall, the second element, the second methodology was experiential learning and the theater-based learning. So now I would like to share example of theater-based learning with you all that I had incorporated in my class. So yeah. So this is the theater-based learning. As I told you, it includes role plays, dramas, skit, and everything. So now I have even been teaching subject like organizational behavior, wherein there is one topic which was transactional analysis. So it was all about not getting into the depth of it, but it was about the communication. So what I did is, like, before I taught this particular topic into the classroom, I identified few people and I asked them, I gave them a situation and I asked them to prepare a script. So this is the script that was actually prepared by student itself. So you can see the names of the student have been written over here. So students had prepared the script. Now see, when students are preparing it, their involvement increases. Obviously, if I give them one script, then the interest is going to be different. But if it is prepared by them, the interest is going to be different. So this was the script that was been prepared by student itself. And then according to our requirement, we can guide them. So I had guided them with a script. Then these students actually came into the classroom. So this is the actual classroom where I had taken up this role play. So these are the set of the students whom you can see near that whiteboard who are sitting. So these were the people who came up with the script. They actually played it in form of a role play into the classroom, and all other students who were sitting there, they were looking at these students while they were putting up this role play into practice. Once this role play ended, I started asking them series of questions, and from those series of questions, I could bring them to the topic which I wanted to discuss, that was transactional analysis. So by doing this again, there is a great amount of I would say positive energy in the classroom, because there is a high amount of student involvement. They themselves are very much interested in doing something new, rather than having that only one way lecture which becomes very monotonous. So this is the second method, uh, that is a theater based method that can be adopted in the classroom. One thing that we have to remember while we utilize this methodology is that it may not be suitable in each of the subjects, or maybe it is not going to be suitable obviously in all the topics that we are teaching. So we need to identify topic very carefully as to where we can accommodate this type of practice. So now I would again like to share the PPT. So till now, we have seen four methodologies. The first was the project based, the second was the cooperative, the third was the experiential, and the fourth was the theater based. So when it comes to experiential learning, what I used to do is, though I don't have the document to show you as of now, so what I had done is, like, I teach subject like consumer behavior. So I used to ask the students to go and visit certain store, and then I used to give them certain different product categories. So that's not possible right now in this COVID situation, but I'm talking about prior to COVID. So we used to, like, I used to tell them to go and visit a store, and I used to give them a particular product class, and they just had to observe them for 1 hour, and then jotting down those observations, they had to come and discuss next day in the class. So that even can be considered as a part of experiential learning. So see, this is what we have discussed now, and I hope there is a bit of clarity about how these can be incorporated in the classroom. So now let's look at the other ways. So it can be lab-based teaching, library-based projects and assignments, simulation games, and case studies. So first, I would like to start with lab-based teaching. Now, lab-based teaching is like, obviously, because we are in higher educational institutions, we all are going to be privileged to have good and great infrastructure. So we are going to have laboratories. So even if it's a theoretical class, it's always a good practice to bring them out of the classroom and take them somewhere to a different place, so that they are into a new environment. There the vibes are going to be different, and the way they are going to inculcate the knowledge that we are going to share with them is going to be different. So in lamp based teaching, what can be done is that they can be taken to the computer labs, and there they can be told to access internet for a particular purpose. So I'll be sharing my own example of as to how I have been incorporating lab based teaching, because all the subjects that I've been teaching have been are theoretical in nature. They are not practical, wherein the labs or my computers are essential. But I have been using this methodology, especially during this COVID. How that I'll be sharing with you. The second method that can be adopted can be library based project and assignments. So we all again have libraries. So see, what happens is, like, we have a lot of infrastructure available with us, but the problem is that we don't sometimes utilize them in a very careful or a judicious way. So these are all the infrastructural facilities that we have, but we need to avail them in order to make our way of teaching the students more innovative and attractive, so that the enthusiasm keeps on continuing for the entire duration or the span of the course that we are teaching them. So in library based projects and assignments, what we can do is we can give them some work wherein they actually need to go to library, they need to access various sources which are available in the library, and create the projects and submit it to us. So that is the next method that can be adopted. The third can be simulation games. So simulation game is like, simulation is creating a real life like environment, and in form of game, teaching them that this is how real life would be happening. So I have been adopting a practice of games, not exactly stimulation, but then yeah, can be considered as simulation. That's what I'll be sharing with you again. In simulation game, what happens is we are creating a real life environment for them, and then we are putting them into that particular environment, and we are giving them an opportunity to explore things by themselves. So that's how people learn. So they will be learning while they are interacting and getting connected with others, and we are there to guide them with any doubts that they are having. So we are also present there. So that's the beauty of stimulation games, and that should be practiced in the classroom. It's very good if we are able to do it, but then that requires a lot of efforts from faculty, because we need to be understanding that what type of stimulation that we need to create, and that has to be in accordance to the subjects that we are teaching. The fourth method, the prominent one, happens to be the case study, which obviously I have been using because I'm a management faculty. But there are different ways in which this case study can be dealt with. So I'll be sharing my example. So let's look at lab based teaching, stimulation games, and case study. I'll show you how they were being done in my case. So again, I'm stopping this and sharing with my work of how I have been implementing these methods in my classroom. So yeah, I'll be sharing the lab-based learning first. So as I told you, lab-based learning is all about using computer lab facility. So even if it's a theoretical class, this method can be adopted. How is, so these are my recent examples. So I've not kept all of them, but few of them. So what I have done is, because now we are having online teaching, so this can be done while the classes are going on, or maybe before the classes start. We can share them some links or some websites which they need to explore, and based on those websites or web link, the data, the discussion can proceed. Now when this type of activity is being done, what happens is, because there is a change that student get, rather than that monotonous teaching, their involvement is comparatively high. Now, when it comes to lab based teaching, it is not just sharing the YouTube links, it can be anything. Like in my case, I used to even tell them to access websites of particular company for the course like brand management, wherein I had to teach them concepts like brand portfolio, product line, line extensions. So, yeah, what I used to do is, like, I used to take them to the computer labs, and then I used to ask them to open certain websites of the certain companies, and then I used to teach them the concepts, and then I used to ask them to identify it from the website of that particular company, that how we can correlate it with the concepts that we have discussed. So if you see over here, so these are the resources that I've been sharing with them. So for brand value chain, there's a concept like this. So I used to share them some video links, and one at a time I have shared this with them, so that they will come, they will watch it, they'll come back, and then we are going to discuss. So that's how it used to go. Even for brand equity measurement, so there is a online tool that's available. So this is also one of great ideas. Just sharing videos is not lab based teaching. So there are different tools, online tools, which are available. So if we have an idea of these online tools, so we can share those. Like we can take them to the computer labs, we can ask them to open the web links of those particular tools, they can access those tools, they can do it themselves, and then they can have a great idea about the topics that have been taught. So this is also one of the practice that I've been doing. And one more element is like, there are a lot of e-papers which are available, especially when it comes to branding. So something of that sort would be available in your areas also. So what I have done is, like, for different brands, I had given them different web links. I had divided this work among the students. They had to read this activity, they had to present it in the classroom, and then I was relating it with the concepts that we have been discussing. So here also what is happening is that when they have to read the article, I was not giving it to them ready in their hand. I'd given them certain newspaper links. So if you see, that's from Economic Times, brand equity, and so on. I'd given them some links, they had to go and explore them. So the presenters had to do a detailed study, while other people who are in the class used to read this article at that particular given point of time. So this is how we can actually change the environment, bring them to a new place, and let them explore more about the subject that we are teaching. So please, like, I really assure you, this is going to be a very refreshing change, not only for the students, but for even us being faculty members. So this is how lab based approach can be followed. um, the next approach that was there was the stimulation activity. So now see, so yeah, I think that the screen is visible. Now stimulation activity and game. Now every time, it's not necessary that we have to be doing everything alone. Now what I had done, this is a bit old story, but then what I had done for this was, like, I, along with one of my colleague, got associated for a particular activity. We planned it together, and the subjects that we were talking, like, that we were teaching at that point of time, was like, I was dealing with something called organizational behavior, and my colleague was dealing with something called strategic management. So then we had all our students together, like the same class. So we had all the students together, we gave them certain instruction with regards to how the game is to be played. But then they were left alone to discuss the strategy. So it was divided into group, they were discussing the strategy. And then when the strategies were discussed, then we actually played the game. And whenever this game was played, in between we were trying to connect everything with the concepts that are relevant to each of our fields. That's I was discussing about how what they have done, whatever step they had taken, how it's relevant with strategy is what Meeta madam was talking about. And I was like trying to relate it with the concept of organizational behavior. So something like this can be created, wherein maybe there are many of the subjects which we may find that they are very much related, or maybe they go hand in hand. So there few faculties can come together, design something, and do something differently for the student. So this also can be a refreshing change for the faculty as well as student who are associated with the subject. So so these were few of the examples that how I have been practicing. Obviously, not best of them, even I'm learning, but let's look at what are the other ways. So now this is what we have done. Okay, case studies remaining. So before I move on to case study, I'll like to take up the others also, and then I'll take study simultaneously. The other methods are flipped classroom, field work-based learning, activity-based learning, and gamification. So I will start with gamification. So if you recall, I told you that one of the challenges that is associated with higher education is the relevance of artificial intelligence nowadays in higher education. So now because students are very much into mobile phones, laptops, and everything, gamification has got a lot of prominence. That's teaching the concepts through some games, making it very interactive. So gamification is also one of the methodologies that can be adopted. So far, I have not implemented that into the classroom, so I'm not at a position to share anything with regards to gamification with reference to the work that I have done. But gamification is nothing but it is adoption of games into the classroom so as to teach the concepts to the students. The other prominent factor happens to be flipped classroom. That's again one of the methodology. Now, flipped classroom is something which we all can practice after COVID goes away. Because flipped classroom, what is it is whatever theories we teach them in the classroom, we have to supply those theory material in advance to the students. It can be in any format, like maybe we can ask them to read it by themselves, or maybe we can prepare a video, a short video of our own talking about those concepts and share it in advance with the students. Let them at their home sit and see what are the basic aspects related to the particular concepts that we are covering. And then next day when they come into the classroom, we will look into the implementation aspects. We will ask them what they learned from the video that was being shared to them in advance, and how they can be implemented. So that's what is flipped classroom. Now why am this again is a method which I have not followed, but this can be followed now, because now we all, because of COVID, have been are adopted to this online mode of teaching. So we know now how the videos are to be created, how they are to be recorded, how they can be shared. So we can now adopt flipped classroom, maybe not for all the topics that we are delivering with or maybe dealing with, but for few of the topics we can create contents, share them in advance with the students, and then when they come back into the classroom we can look at the implementation aspects of those concepts that we had shared. This method is a great one because the faculty gets a lot of time when the students come back into the classroom, wherein they would be implementing the aspects. Faculty can guide them individually and can look at the understanding level of the students. So that's what flipped classroom is. Field work based learning is like students can be asked to go to the field. So various projects that we give them, like in case of management we have something called social internship project, wherein they go to the NGO and work there for 1 month, or maybe this is even there in case of MSW. We even have industrial projects, that is summer internship projects in industry, wherein they go to industry and there they work. So such type of field based learning projects also can be given depending upon the subjects that we teach. Activity based learning is also one of the methods, that is playing some activity in the classroom and then coming to a consensus and common point and then discussing the concept. So activity based learning I have been practicing, and I'll be sharing that with you. So I'll be sharing my own examples of case teaching and activity based learning. So I'll stop presenting this now and share the screen. So case study approach. So case studies, now see, again, the identification of the case study has to be done and planned well in advance before the classroom session begins. So if you see to it, I have the title of the case, I have that what is the major content that I'm talking about, I have the proposed date on which I would be taking up the case. So this is the planning that we have to do. So cases are not that tomorrow you have to teach in the class and today you start going and trying to identify the case. That should not be the story. You have to identify the cases well in advance so that we can prepare it well. So these are the list of cases that I had identified for my subject. Now I would just I told you that when we talk about cases, it's not just merely discussion. There are even other ways of teaching case studies. So I would like to just highlight the case number 17. That's Oreo in India. What I did in that case study is, like, this case study was having a lot of information into it. It was talking about four P's, the ways they were advertising, the way they were communicating, etc., etc. So I created groups for this case study. This case study was given to them well in advance. They were asked to bring in a chart paper the next day, and then based on their understanding of the case study, they had to prepare the chart in the most creative formats and then present their chart. So it was a chart presentation for the case study rather than the normal discussion. So it took me long to do this. Obviously, the number of sessions, I had to take up session from other faculty also to go ahead with this, because there were a lot of time was required by them in order to prepare that chart and then present that chart. So this is one of the ways in which cases can be done. It's not just like we have to go on, because if we are having multiple cases in the classroom, so we may not be able to like, if we take all the classes of case study by just instructing and talking, then again that becomes monotonous. So there are, if you see, there are 8 case studies. I was not able to take up all those case studies. Only few case studies I could take up, but then listing them down is always a good idea, because you have an what we say, planning of these are the elements that you have ready. Whenever it's at right time, you can take it into the classroom. So more of case studies cannot be incorporated, but if you have a list of all the cases that you have to deal with, it becomes easy. The second method of using the cases can be the video based case study, wherein students can be asked to read the case study and then they can be asked to create the videos based on the case study, or maybe create the videos by sharing their opinion in form of videos, and those videos can be shown in the classroom and then everybody can discuss. So that's also one of the way. And the traditional method is like, we can have that method wherein the students are debating upon the pointers that have been mentioned in the case study and the discussion. So these are the different ways in which case studies can be dealt. So depending upon the situation into which you are, or maybe the amount of course that has been completed or the amount of course that is left, the appropriate methods can be utilized. So many case studies, again I'm telling you, so many case studies may not be like, we are not able to incorporate in a single classroom, but listing all the case studies is always a great idea. Now the next method that I was talking about happens to be the activity, right? So when it comes to activity, it's like a lot of activities related to the subjects that you would be teaching would be available online. Few activities can be created by you also. So for one of the subjects, that's organizational behavior, that's a topic called Johari window. So for this, what I had done is, I had created activity like this and I had presented, this is a PPT, I had presented in form of PPT to the student. The student had to do it in group, two people in one group, and then I had given them some tasks task. So you identify something for me and my partner, and then I showed them something. So see, if you look into these slides, there is nothing which is written about the concept. It's just what they had to do. Once they were done with this, we were discussing. So because it was about their friends only, it becomes very interesting for them and they enjoy it. And then once the discussion was over, then I took them to the concept of Johari window, that how the tool is applicable to them. So if you're doing it yourself, so you understand better. So this is also one of the method that can be adapted, that is having games. So I had games for different type of topics that I was dealing with, like personality, something I had for Johari window, and so on and so forth. So we need to identify that what type of innovation we can do with the topics that we have, so as to make it more interesting and more relevant to the student. So I'm again sharing my screen. So for this fourth objective that we have, so we have looked at various tools like project-based learning, cooperative learning, experiential, theater-based learning, lab-based teaching, library-based projects and assignments, simulation games, case studies, flipped classroom, field work-based learning, activity-based learning, and gamification. Now, how to identify that which tool is more appropriate for me? So based on the experiences that I have had, this is what can be done. Once the subject has been allocated to us, we need to have a detailed course plan and session plan. That is, if we are supposed to take 30 sessions for that particular topic, so we need to have a detailed uh, document prepared, maybe in an Excel or maybe in a Word document, whatever is preferred, wherein we have lecture wise detail of lecture 1, 2, 3, and so forth till lecture number 30 or lecture number 45, depending upon the credits of that course. Once that has been done, we have to go on topic wise. For example, if it's topic number 1, so for topic number 1, I should be having a great uh, idea about what is a concept that I want to like talk to the student about, what is the application of that concept that I'm going to talk to my students, and what type of practical exposure can I give to. If I am having answers to these three questions, then I'll be able to identify an appropriate pedagogy for myself. Now, one more thing, rule of a thumb is, we cannot incorporate all these practices in one subject at a go. We may be selecting one or two. We may be having just one, that's fine. But then we need to be identifying an appropriate tool. That is very, very important. So just that, because we are aware of multiple tools, so the examples that I have showed you, so they were done with different type of students. That was not for one common subject, it was not for one set of students. So I had implemented it at different subjects for different type of students. So everything we cannot do for one particular subject, we have to identify it appropriately, because many a times we don't have that much duration that we can incorporate all these practices, and then we can teach the students also. So both should go in line. So what we have to do is, we have to look into that whether the topic that I'm talking about, or maybe the topic that I am looking at, does a particular pedagogy suit it or not, or it's a lecture method, or it's a discussion, or it's an activity. So accordingly the planning has to be done. One key point that we have to remember is that everything, this entire planning, has to be done before the day you enter the class for your first session. So if you have planning, it will become easy for you to deviate from it if required. So if you have something ready, it becomes easy for you. So that's what is my learning and understanding about what tools can be incorporated by us in order to make our teaching methods more appropriate and reliable for the students. So this is again not the best practice, but this is what I have learned on the basis of the experience, and on the basis of the practices that I have been incorporating in my sessions. So this brings an end to the discussion today. So I would like to quickly summarize the session. that we had. We have talked about what is quality. We've talked about the relevance and the dimensions of quality. We've looked at what are the different stakeholders associated with higher education. We've looked at the various elements in teaching learning process and saw that how pedagogy plays an important role when it comes to teaching learning. And lastly, we have looked at various innovative ways in which we can teach in the classroom. And I've shared few examples of mine in order to justify that how they can be actually implemented. They are not just theories, but the only problem is that we need to identify the appropriate topic, because every topic may not be same, every subject is not same, every faculty is not same, every student is not same. So depending upon our situations, depending upon our own experiences, a correct practice can be adopted to make the contents more qualitative, more innovative. Because if our students are able to imbibe the practical aspects of the subjects that we are teaching, then and then only they will be able to implement it better. So that was an objective of taking up this topic. I hope you have liked the session and you have understood the topics that I have shared with you. So thank you very much for your valuable time, and it was indeed a privilege being with you all. And thanks a lot. So this is at the end just the references that I have used, various secondary sources, various ebooks, and the links that I have used in order to prepare the contents for this session. Thank you very much, and have a great time and stay safe. Thank you.